Hello everyone, Francis Walsh here again with thedigitalmerchant.com, and today I'm going to be taking you through all the alternatives that are out there to Process Street in terms of process documentation, logging SOPs, all that kind of thing for your business. So obviously this is the kind of function that would have been done manually in years gone by. There's no real reason to be doing it manually now. There are a huge amount of tools out there that can help with this. And we're going to be looking at some of them today. And now Process Street is, I suppose, maybe the leading name in this area. It's a name a lot of people will be familiar with. But I do just think it's quite limited in 2025, particularly given its price. And so I just think there are a lot more modern alternatives out there that are offering more service for less money. And we're going to have a look at a few of them today. So I suppose the logical place to start here is by looking at Process Street itself and what it kind of does. So I suppose centrally it is a tool that helps you document workflows. So it does this kind of mainly on a checklist basis. So its central function is the creation of checklists to standardize the common workflows that you'll encounter in your business day to day. So essentially you design your process once, run it that way every time afterwards, and you kind of use Process Street as your guide. So rather than doing a process different ways across team members or doing it a different way each time you do it, you document it, build a checklist on that basis, and then you strike off items on that checklist every time going forward. You can use Process Street to build custom forms that integrate into your workflows automatically. There's a simple document editor there for writing and sharing standard operating procedures and reference docs. And it's also good with integrations. So it supports Zapier and other integration platforms like that. And they can trigger actions in external apps then when certain steps are completed. So there's a lot to like about this. It really does make this kind of thing a lot more simple. And it does represent a good investment, I think, for a lot of companies. However, it really is far from perfect. And particularly now in 2025, I just don't think it's the best option for a lot of companies, particularly smaller companies. First off is the cost. It does cost a lot more than its competitors. Now, it is a little bit cloak and dagger when it comes to pricing. It doesn't publicly list its rates for various subscription tiers. You'll kind of have to get in contact with the sales team and negotiate all of that yourself, which also adds a layer of friction. It's not something I generally recommend to businesses. I think it's better to have a clear idea of pricing before you start looking into a B2B service like this. But even when the prices have come out, they do tend to be higher than what you're going to be paying elsewhere. So you can kind of see what I mean here on the pricing page. There's no prices, as you can see, as there would typically be with other platforms. Another issue, and you'll kind of see it here as we go down further on this page, is that a lot of the most useful features, particularly around security and privacy and support and services here, a lot of them are locked at the enterprise level. So again, that's another layer of expense that's going to set you back. And then one kind of specific thing I think that I'm not in love with about Process Street, it doesn't really do enough in terms of automation. So you do still have to create all these checklists manually. There's no way to just automatically, like say, do a process and have the app record you and make a checklist itself using AI. As we'll see now as we go through this review, this isn't something you have to put up with in 2025. There are tools out there that can do this kind of thing for you. So the first of these alternatives that we're going to look at is called Gid. Now, Gid is a really cutting edge AI platform. It's really making top class use of machine learning, I think, because there's a lot of tools out there at the moment that have AI plastered all over them, and they love talking about AI and their AI plugins and features, but really they're not making any great practical use of the AI. This is not the case with Gid. Gid, so basically how it works is, as you can see here, it kind of functions on the basis of a browser extension. So you plug in the browser extension, activate it, and then you do your process that you're going to do. And the tool will record you doing the process and then make a standard operating procedure on that basis. And it can generate it in video or in text. So it's really cool, really useful, really cuts out a lot of that manual work that you'll see with other tools like Process Street. As you can see here, it's got a lot of trust in the tech industry at the moment. A lot of big names have started working with it. And yeah, I'm just really impressed by it. I think it's doing a great job. Even though it's quite advanced, the ease of use is a really big plus with it. It's not hard to get set up with, even if you're not that tech savvy. The outputs are really customizable. I really like the way that there's a multimedia approach, so you can kind of generate tutorials in video or in text, depending on your team's needs and the nature of the processes, obviously, but it's handy to have that option. And it's also quite cost effective. And I know I raised this as an issue with Process Streak, that the price can be too high. But the thing with Gid is really it is quite affordable. Like, its business plan runs to $35 per creator per month when billed annually, and supports up to 5 creator accounts. And that's another really important thing, is that you're paying for creator accounts, not user accounts. So you're not paying for every individual who's going to access an SOP, you're just paying for the people who are actually going to make them. And that, I think, is a really handy way of saving money, because with a lot of these platforms, you're paying for every single person who has access to the system. And, you know, first of all, it's a difficult thing to kind of say up front how many people in your team that might be. It's not something you necessarily want. It's not a decision you necessarily want to have to make before you sign up for your subscription. So I think Gid's system is a lot more user friendly and a lot more geared towards helping you get the best possible value from your subscription. The AI can be a little bit imperfect at times, and the support infrastructure maybe is not as robust as what you'll see with some other tools. But I really like Gid. I really highly recommend it to people. And yeah, I think it's going to be onwards and upwards from here, because obviously this tech is only going to get better. So the next tool we're going to be looking at here is Suite Process. Now, Suite Process I kind of think of as a real sort of traditional bare bones SOP documentation tool. It's quite similar to Process Street in a number of ways, but it might be just a little bit less advanced in some areas. So one kind of quirk of this platform, and it's either a plus or a minus depending on the size of your team, but it uses flat pricing. So you're going to pay a flat monthly fee, and I think the basic one is $99 per month, regardless of the size of your team. So as you can see here, it's $99 per month for a team with up to 20 active members. That means if you have between 15 and 20 people, it represents great value. If you only have 2 to 5 members, let's say, it probably doesn't represent that great value. So for me, this is kind of one of those specific use cases where, like, if you just want kind of a basic documentation tool and you are in that sweet spot of employee numbers, then this could really represent a good buy for you. If you are a smaller team, it may just not represent value. You might be better off going with something else. And another thing I'd flag is that, like Process Street, it is quite limited in terms of automations and integrations. You don't have something that's as advanced as the likes of Gid, where you have that automated, video-based documentation. But it is a solid tool, and I know a lot of teams get great value from it. But I think the pricing is probably the main thing to keep your eye on here. Then the next process documentation alternative we're going to look at is Monday.com. Now, Monday.com is a name you're probably familiar with. It's constantly on YouTube ads. A lot of workplaces use it as their general project management tool. It's a really well recognized name, and it's a really robust platform, not just for process documentation, but for everything across project management. So it does have a kind of a functionality whereby you can train it to be your process documentation tool. And if you want a platform that is a more general project management platform, and you want to have process documentation as part of that, then I think Monday.com is a really solid option, because obviously you get that all-in-one kind of functionality. As you can see here, it's a really highly respected platform. It's got the trust of a lot of big names, and it'll really cover a lot of your bases in terms of project management. So if that's what you're after, then I think it's a good call. The problem I would have with it is that if you primarily want a process documentation tool, I think you're probably better off going with the more specialized platform, because the thing about Monday.com is it's not necessarily set up to facilitate just that. So if you want to make process documents mainly with it, you're probably going to find there's a little bit more legwork involved than if you use something like Process Street, and particularly something like Gid, which is really geared towards that automation of those processes. So again, it kind of depends on your use case. If you do want an all-in-one platform, I do really like Monday.com for that kind of use case. And so the last of these alternatives we're going to look at is called Trainual. Now, Trainual, again, takes a slightly different approach than maybe the traditional Process Street kind of documentation tool. It is really more for training than just for documentation, and it's particularly useful for training newer employees or new hires. Basically getting them up to speed on your processes, and if there's any compliance requirements around that, it can kind of help with that as well. So basically, once you document your processes, Trainual will give you the option to, generate quizzes so that the users can, reinforce their knowledge, and so that you can assess that they know the requisite material and that they're up to speed on everything they need to be up to speed on. So again, this is kind of a specific use case consideration. If you are, if onboarding is a pain point for you, if you've got a lot of kind of technical processes that new hires are going to need to be familiar with, this is a really good way of kind of enforcing that and getting that knowledge across. If what you're looking for is more of just a kind of a straight documentation tool, I'd probably recommend looking elsewhere, just because it's a bit heavy just for that, and you can probably get to where you're going with a slightly lighter tool. The other thing, and I suppose this is kind of tied in with that weight and that the comprehensiveness of the system, price. So price is really the elephant in the room when it comes to Trainual. It's one of the priciest tools in this space. Plans start at $249 a month for up to 10 users, as you can see here. And look, that's a lot. I mean, when you compare to something like Gid, which starts at $35 a month, it just really is expensive. So unless you need that kind of instruction and assessment leg to the tool, I probably just wouldn't bother with it. But again, if you do need it, it's a great place to look. And so I suppose in terms of my ultimate recommendation, I've probably made it quite obvious, but I would recommend Gid for the majority of businesses who are looking for process documentation. I just think the automation it offers is just best in class. It really makes this whole process so easy. It's small company friendly too when it comes to pricing and all that kind of thing, but it will also scale with you. And I just think it's doing things in this area that other companies simply are not doing. So yeah, I'd really encourage anyone who's looking for kind of help in this space to at least give Git a try. The free version is actually pretty good, but even if you want to invest in the paid version for a month, it's not going to set you back too much. But yeah, really a huge fan of this platform, love everything they're doing. So that's all from me on this video. Best of luck to anyone who is currently looking for a tool to help with documenting their SOPs. And as always, I'll see you in the next video.